time. And I just want to do a quick review with you guys. So, here's the thing I want to talk to you about is when using the income approach to appraisal, which of the following expenses is not deducted to obtain net income? When using the income approach to appraisal, which of the following expenses is not used to calculate or to obtain net income? So I'll give you guys a second to think about this. What do you guys think as far as what would we not include here? Okay, what would we not include? So one of the things that I want to make sure that you understand is that the operating expenses are the things that we would run into if we were actually thinking about what this property costs, right? What does this property cost to maintain? So we would have maintenance costs. We would have to consider that. We would also have vacancy and collection losses because not all of our units are always going to be active, right? Are always going to be occupied. We're going to have some tenants that we're in the middle of evicting, and we have to take that into account as well, right? If we're evicting somebody, they wouldn't be paying us rent. That's part of our collection losses. So those are part of the expenses of the property. What about the property insurance? Would that be an operating expense of a building? If I owned a building, would my property insurance be part of it? What do you guys think? Sure, of course it would, right? That's an expense of that building. That's an expense of that building. Now, what about owner income taxes, though? Owner income taxes are an expense of the owner. They're not related to the building. So my income taxes would not be related to the building itself. Therefore, I wouldn't consider owner income taxes to deduct that from my income, because we're talking about the income of the building, right? Okay. Next question. Kathy buys a home and notices that there are restrictions recorded by the developer that apply to her entire subdivision. What are these restrictions called? Are they encroachments? Are they liens? Are they CC&Rs? Or are they plat maps? What would be the thing that would be restrictions that would be recorded? What would they be? Anybody remember this one? What would be the restrictions that would be, hey Desiree, what would be the restrictions that would be recorded? Would they be encroachments? Would they be liens? Would they be CC&Rs? Or would they be plat maps? So yeah, the CC&Rs would definitely be recorded to tell what the things that I'm allowed to do and not do in the subdivision, right? What's a plat map, though? Anybody remember what a plat map is? Anybody remember that one? What's a plat map? When would I see a plat map? Remember, that's what subdivisions. If I have a subdivision, before I start to develop it, if I'm a developer, I would have to submit a plat map and have it approved before I could break ground on the new subdivision. So plat maps go with subdivisions. How about an encroachment? Give me an example of an encroachment. Does anybody remember what an example of an encroachment would be? What do you guys think? So, what about if my neighbor built his shed on my property? If my neighbor built his shed on my property, would that be an encroachment? Yeah, of course. That would definitely be an encroachment, right? So how would I know if my neighbor's shed was encroaching on my property? What if I'm not 100% sure where my property lines are? How would I find out? And I would find out by ordering a survey on the property, right? Remember that? Okay, next question. Government regulations specifying minimum construction and building standards to safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the public are known as, is it covenants? Is it dedication? Is it building codes, or is it deed of trust? Covenants, dedication, building codes, or deed of trust? What would be the government regulations specifying the minimum construction and building safety standards? Of course, those would be building codes, right? And why are building codes important? Why do we care about building codes? Well, because they would keep everything safe. What if I went out and built a house on my property and there were no building codes, and I just threw things together and didn't know what I was up to, and no one checked on me, no one made me pull a permit, no, nothing like that. And suddenly the house collapsed and everybody inside was harmed, right? So the building codes are part of the government's police power, how they look at how they reasonably restrict what we can and cannot do with our property, right? Okay, next, let's see, we have Jenny unsuccessfully claimed that she did not know about the content of a document recorded at the courthouse. She cannot claim this due to the legal principle known as what? When I'm expected to know something. Remember, when I'm expected to know something. Do I have constructive notice? Do I have caveat emptor? Do I have actual notice or statute of limitations? When I told the judge, oh, I just didn't know, he's going to say, too bad, because when I record something at the courthouse, that's giving the world notice. Anybody who wants to know about it can go check it out, right? So that's constructive notice. But what if I actually go down to the courthouse and I do check it out? In that case, it would be actual notice. When I've seen it for myself, that's actual notice. What about statute of limitations? When would we run into statute of limitations? When would that be? When would we run into the statute of limitations? When would that affect us? And the statute of limitations is like, if we're going to sue somebody, we have to do so within a specified period of time. If you watch crime shows, they're always like, oh, the statute of limitations ran out before he was caught, and so therefore he didn't get in trouble for this or whatever. That's the statute of limitations. It's the time that they can bring legal action to me, either civil legal action in a courtroom, or they can bring like criminal legal action. If I did something criminal, the statute of limitations. So that's another word to remember. Amy came from a small family and has no heirs. She dies intestate and all of her real property passed to the government. Uh-oh. What do we call this? She died intestate. So remember, if someone dies intestate, they died without a will, right? If I die testate, I have a will. And I put in my will who I want to get my stuff when I'm dead, right? But if I die intestate, it means I died without a will. Now, not just because I died intestate doesn't mean that the government's going to come and snatch all my property up right away and take it from my estate. No, obviously not, right? They're going to look around using the laws of descent and try to find out if I have any living heirs. But here, Amy has nobody. She's the last in her family. No one else is alive. She has no heirs. So the government would eventually take her stuff through escheat. Now remember, is that escheat? Another little pop quiz here. Is that when we talk about escheat, is that a voluntary or an involuntary transfer of the deed? If Amy died and the government came along and took her stuff, would that be voluntary or involuntary transfer of a deed? And in that case, that would be involuntary, right? It's happening whether she agreed to it or not. So that's an involuntary transfer. But what would be a voluntary transfer of a deed? Does anybody know what a voluntary transfer of a deed is? If you know, put it in the comments, put it in the chat. Let me know what would be a voluntary transfer of a deed. And what if I sold my property to Desiree? That would definitely be a voluntary transfer, right? I'm deciding to do it. I'm doing it of my own free will. That's an example of a voluntary transfer of real estate. All right, guys, I have to go teach a class, but I wanted to just check in with you guys and pop in and say hello and do a few questions with you. If you are studying for your real estate exam and you're looking for some study sessions, I'm going to try to do some more live, so be sure to follow and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.